Yes, yes, yes. What is going on, Rain Gang family? Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. I am your wonderfully gracious host, Sutton Def. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for coming through to this episode of the show. We got a lot to talk about, and listen, I just want to start off by saying this. I dearly apologize for the last couple of days, me being a little bit inactive on the channel, had some family in town. As it as it is, I actually do have my studio here set up in my guest room. So had my guest room a little bit taken over, and I wanted to spend some time with the fam. So took a couple of days off there, but we are officially back and better than ever. I see you guys trickling in here in the chat. If you're watching live, big shout out to you. I love the live watchers, listeners, whatever you may consume it as. Chris M is in the house. What's going on, Chris? Jing is in the house. As Hey Sutton, what's going on? Jing, appreciate you for coming through on this wonderful Tuesday evening. I know this is kind of like a late night stream, right? A late night stream, considering especially on East Coast Standard Time. So, but I appreciate you guys for rocking out with me here. Already 40 people watching live. I see my guy D Wiz in the chat. What's going on, D Wiz? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let's go ahead and get into it. You guys see the title of the video, right? So the good, the bad, and the ugly, right, of the Ravens going into preseason week 2. Now, obviously, like I said before, I had not did any coverage on the week 1 preseason game, but I did watch it over a couple of times and read basically every single report that came out after. You guys know, like the little PFF rankings and things like that come out. I read into a lot of those as well, seeing how guys graded out. Guys like the ones you see on the thumbnail for this video, guys like Daniel Faalele, guys like Mike Green, guys like Jalen Armour Davis, who I think is going to have a much bigger role this season, especially given some of the ugly things that happened in the first week of preseason, which we'll get into. ISO, what's going on, ISO? I see you in the chat as well. Appreciate y'all for coming through. And Lisa Ann in the house. I see Dre in the house. Lisa says, hey, Sutton Def, how about LaJohntay Wester in the 87-yard return for a touchdown? Yeah, man. So that is going to be part of the good for sure. So let's just go ahead and get into the good. And we can start with that. I don't mind starting with that, Lisa. Yeah, so LaJohntay Wester. LaJohntay Wester is a guy that the Ravens drafted in the later rounds of their 2025 draft. And, guy out of Colorado, played with Shador Sanders alongside Travis Hunter and some more guys. And so he kind of really didn't get the shine that he was supposed to get in college. But obviously the Ravens saw something in him. And I think what Todd Monken actually spoke about today about LaJohntay Wester speaks volumes for how the Ravens plan on using him going forward. But let's talk about the 87-yard touchdown. On that play, I thought that he did a very, very good job of just getting north, right? And I want to focus on the whole north-south um, kind of premise when I talk about LaJohntay Wester, because I think that's one of his better traits, is his better skill sets. It's just knowing how to get upfield, and like that's something that we have wanted for so long. We have wanted for so long out of a lot of our receivers. Cough, cough, Zay Flowers, who says he's going to get more north this season. We'll see how that ends up shaking out. But this guy, LaJohntay Wester, I think it has a similar game to Zay Flowers in a lot of ways. And Todd Monken actually spoke about that today. Todd Monken had said, LaJohntay Wester is a guy who is going to make this team, especially as, a punt returner. So that means you're going to see him on offensive possessions as well. And he basically, in so many words, said that, when you have a guy like Zay Flowers who does what he does, and LaJohntay Wester does some of those same things, like they're kind of similar in that regard, you can kind of see us swapping out. Like he could see himself, Todd Monken, that is, he can see himself swapping out Zay Flowers for LaJohntay Wester for whatever reason, whether that means, Zay Flowers has to sit a week because maybe his knee is bothering him or something like that, or whatever. I don't want to wish perpetual injury on anybody, so I'll go ahead and knock on wood for that one. But yeah, I can see that LaJohntay Wester is the type of receiver that I think Todd Monken is going to utilize, kind of like that new joystick, right? Kind of like that new gadget guy, right? I think LaJohntay Wester is your new, what he wanted Zay Flowers to be, catching wide receiver screens, things like that. Um, I think LaJohntay Wester is your new Devin Duvernay, right? And again, talking about the 87-yard return that Lisa brings up here, man, he did a really good job of making one cut and getting upfield quick, fast, and in a hurry. Guys were pretty much grasping for air. I think that how tall is LaJohntay Wester? I really like LaJohntay Wester's frame. I like his frame. He's not the biggest of guys, which allows him to be so elusive as he is, but he's also fearless too. He's also fearless. Let me see. LaJohntay Wester. I just want to know his height. He's 5'10". Okay, wow. So he's a tad shorter than I thought he was. He's 5'10". But again, man, I think that LaJohntay Wester has a legitimate chance not only to make this roster. Like I said, Todd Monken all but confirmed it today in the presser. But I also think that he has a chance to be a big part of the offense just because if he can be kind of like that gadget guy, like again, like they wanted Zay Flowers to be. But I think you'll see Zay Flowers going more, running more deep routes and contesting the middle of the field more this season. And you'll see LaJohntay Wester in on downs where he'll get some quick wide receiver screens from Lamar. And, I've seen him at Colorado take those wide receiver screens, which, by the way, coming from a Shador Sanders who has much more of I guess you could say, like a touch and an arc on his passes than Lamar Jackson does. You guys know how Lamar Jackson kind of zips the ball to his guys. I think that LaJohntay Wester is going to be getting the ball a lot faster with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson passing it to him, over in the flat or for the wide receiver screen. And once he gets that ball, man, he does a really good job of being fearless. Again, like I said, and this is something that no slight to Zay Flowers. Again, no slight to Zay Flowers. But I think that Zay Flowers, he does try to get east and west a little bit more. He kind of prioritizes that mainly because of his size and his smaller frame. He's even said it himself. Like, you see how big these dudes are out here. Like, you'd be going east to west too. But LaJohntay Wester, he seems to burst through the hole, right? And like really be able to get north and like have guys really trying to like get their hands on his pads, right? As he's running by them. Like, he's one of those type of guys. Very shifty, very elusive, and he's got some good top end speed as well. So, I'm very, very excited to see what LaJohntay Wester has to offer this season for the Ravens. And I'm very, very excited to see how Todd Monken decides to utilize LaJohntay Wester this season as well. Let me see what you guys are saying here in the chat. Dre says he looks taller than 5'10". He really does, right? I would have given him at least 5'11", 6 foot, something like that. Let me see. Black Daniel says, peace in the chat. Peace, brother. Peace. Appreciate you for coming through as always. Black Daniel, that's a true purple rain pioneer right there. Always coming through, always supporting. Appreciate you, brother. Judy Harris in the house says it's time to start getting Lamar Jackson the credit he deserves. Yeah, and I kind of want to touch on some of that QB tier list stuff too, maybe a little bit later in the episode. But yeah, so LaJohntay Wester was definitely a part of the good, definitely a part of the good that I saw from this past preseason game, and I expect to see some more out of him, in week 2 of preseason as well. Let me see. Love West in here says, what I hate about the preseason is we have horrible quarterback play, and I can't see what wide receivers can really do. This is true. I can definitely agree with this. Because, the backups simply weren't all that. Cooper Rush is somebody who I saw did not have a good game at all. And this is something that I think you kind of have to take with a grain of salt, because just like I mentioned on one of the previous episodes of the Purple Rain podcast with Alex, I was telling him, I was like, anytime you do something for the first time, this was their first live game, it's going to be like kind of a growing pain. So I would expect going into week 2 of the preseason to get a little bit more competent at QB play, so we can see a little bit more production out of the wide receivers and what some of them have to offer, because there's a lot of guys, we would definitely love to see what LaJohntay Wester has to offer. Would definitely love to see what some other guys do too. Xavier Guillory is another guy who I've been looking at. So we'll see what they can put on tape, especially if they can get some good quarterback play. But I do expect for week 2 to be slightly better than week 1 in quarterback play. So, all right. So let's get into more of the good from week 1 preseason and going into week 2 of the preseason. Let's talk some Mike Green, shall we? Let's talk some Mike Green. I think that Mike Green is a guy who, a lot of Ravens fans, including myself, don't get me wrong, me too. I have been, clamoring to see this guy in live game action, and he didn't disappoint. I'll say that right here and now. He did not disappoint. I want to go ahead and bring up the stat here. Mike Green in his preseason debut had a 30% pass rush win rate versus the Colts, and that is per Pro Football Focus PFF. Good old PFF, right, guys? Um, but yeah, no. When you saw what he put on tape, I mean, there were a couple of reps where he didn't all the way win his rep, but you could see not only does he have such a great arsenal of pass rush moves, he can kind of chain them together in such a way where if one thing isn't working, he can immediately get to the next pass rush move. And I saw a lot of film guys talking about that. And when you look at it, it's clear as day. It is absolutely clear as day. A lot of people are talking about the bend that he has, especially for his size. I think that's very important as well. Uh, you know, when it comes to Mike Green, I think that all we're really looking for from him is to be that closer, right? Because while the Ravens did, they were top three in sacks the last 2 seasons, and that is an absolute fact. You can look it up. You can look it up. It's a fact. The Ravens were number one in sack production in 2023 and number two, I believe, in 2024. So we'll see what they have in 2025. But the issue wasn't the number of sacks, it was the timing, and the timing of when we were able to get pressure on guys when the going really got tough. So all we're really looking to get from Mike Green is some fourth quarter reps in big third down moments where he can run a guy off his spot or maybe even get the sack. So I know he's going to be sitting behind Odafe Owe and Kyle Van Noy. Those are the vets on this roster, and they continue to put, really good seasons together, with Kyle Van Noy having 12 and a half sacks last season, I believe, and Odafe Owe getting that 10. Those guys are going to get the most opportunity. So let's just put that out right here, right now. Like, we cannot expect for Mike Green to be getting a bunch of live reps, especially when the season starts. Now, I think it would be doing him a disservice if I'm Zach Orr and ultimately John Harbaugh as well to not get him on the field as much as possible so you can get the training wheels off of him as quick as possible. Because again, the Ravens are in a Super Bowl win now mode, quite simply put, right? Win now, not next season, not the season after that. It's literally win now, right? So I think with that being said, Mike Green, he looked really good. I think that Zach or no, it was Chuck Smith, the pass rushing coach. He said that Mike Green, he works really hard. He's got a great motor on him. But the one thing that I really took from what he said, Chuck, that is, he said that you feel him on every rep. Like, that is something that's evident when you pull it up on the screen and you watch the tape. Like, this guy is with a 4-man rush, which is what the Ravens need. With a 4-man rush, he is getting around and he is getting around the quarterback's feet at least. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that's very valuable. And I think that once he continues to kind of get these live game reps against NFL level talent on a consistent level, this guy is going to be unstoppable. I think he's going to be unstoppable, and I think that there's going to be no way that Oway stays around for another contract. And I didn't. I just came up with that on the fly. I promise, but I think that that's kind of where we're at with it. But Mike Green, very excited to see him. Very, very excited to see him in week 2 of the preseason, especially going into the regular season as well. Let me see. Dre bringing up here. Adisa, Isaac, and Ojabo looked really good last week. Yes, they do. Or yes, they did. That was a part of the good as well. Ojabo obviously getting that big time sack on Anthony Richardson, man. And, just kind of a quick tidbit here on Anthony Richardson. I just don't think he's going to make it in the league, guys. I think that Anthony Richardson is a guy who, supreme athletic talent. His highs can look very high. You guys remember that? I think it was like a 60-yard touchdown pass that he had last season. It was like maybe in like week 3 or 4 or something like that. Just a straight bomb downfield. I think after rolling out to the left, just about to get hit, and he hits his receiver in stride for a touchdown way down the field. I mean, plays like that from Anthony Richardson really make you question whether or not, you know, you should bench him or not. Really, I think that type of play that happened really extended his leash with the Colts. You know what I mean? And they're still trying to wait to see if he can like get the mechanics down and get the consistency reading defenses making layered throws and things of the like, so he can actually be a consistent, real NFL quarterback and not just a special talent. Because nowadays everybody's going after the special talent. I think that the Lamar Jackson effect, the Josh Allen effect, like getting these freak athletes and then developing them into top tier NFL quarterback talent is kind of the new wave, right? But there's going to be some guys who just take too long to learn, and I think that's why you have to kind of commend Lamar Jackson. He quickly put together that side of his game when it comes to the passing of the football. And now you can see he's 2 MVPs later in what, 3 All Pros, first team All Pros later. Should have 3 MVPs, but another story for another day. But yeah, Adisa and Ojabo looked really good. Can't wait to see. And I love our pass rush depth. I love our pass rush depth right now. I couldn't really ask for more going into the season. I will say that. Dre says Anthony Richardson is teetering on bust level. LOL. I don't like calling nobody that, but he is not good. Yeah. Yeah. And Torres says the same thing. As a Gator fan, I gave him kudos for taking his diet seriously. But aside from that, I never thought he was good. Seen him since day one on the Gators. Yeah, I mean, the highlights that I saw from him in Florida were really just like, again, freak athlete highlights. It wasn't really a whole lot of like cerebral, you know what I mean? Like NFL level talent. I just didn't see that. I didn't really see that. Let me see. All right. A little bit more of the good for me in this one, and he's actually on the thumbnail of this video too. Jalen Armour Davis. Jalen Armour Davis. I think that with him, he's gonna have a much bigger role this year. A much bigger role. And like when I think about Jalen Armour Davis, I think about, I think he's what, a 3rd-year guy, 4th-year guy out of Alabama, I want to say. And he hasn't really been, he's been kind of up and down, he's been hurt a lot, that's for sure. So this year he actually focused more on staying healthy because he realizes the best availability is, well, the best ability is availability, right? So shout out to him for that. But he had a couple of different pass breakups in that game, and I really liked what I saw from him. So he's going to be a lot more important now, especially with the corner depth kind of thinning out by the day. Obviously Bilal Kone and Robert Longerbeam both suffering season-ending injuries, and that's something that really sucks. 2 drafted young corners who you're gonna need, especially on the back end of the season, a long 17-game season and going into the playoffs at some point. Statistics say you're gonna need one of those guys to step up at some point. So I don't know if the Ravens will necessarily go and look for more DB depth in the meantime, but it sounds like something that they might need to think about because if you're losing corners early in the season or like preseason, that's not good. You want to have a wealth of corners going into the season so that way, once the season kind of wears on, for lack of better words, you have guys who you can kind of plug and play, and not necessarily like plug and play and expect the same production level as some of the guys that were ahead of them on the depth chart, but still be able to provide serviceable play on the field. So yeah, like Dre says here, if Jalen Armour Davis stays healthy, he can be a very nice depth piece. I totally agree with that. Robert Krause, what's going on, says, to be fair, Jalen Armour Davis looks better because Mike Green and the rest of the front D line are making his job easier. Yeah, I mean, like pressured throws, forcing errant throws and things like that can definitely make a DB's job easier. I agree with you there, Robert. Um, and a little bit more of the good as well. I was reading up on what's his name? You guys know his name. Okoye, yeah. I was reading up on Okoye after watching some of his tape from, the game, and I was thinking like, this is a guy, a very raw talent at defensive tackle, who the Ravens could potentially get to be kind of like that. I don't know. I don't want to say like Michael Pierce replacement, but I don't know, man. I don't know, man. I just hold on. Let me see. Let me look up the stat. I saw a stat earlier today. I wanted to bring it up. Oh, 1 second, guys. Aha. Yeah. Basil Jacoby Okoye, Nigerian, just came to America 3 years ago. Like, this guy is a very, very raw talent, and John Harbaugh says that he's learning. I love to see what he was putting on tape. He was shedding guys like it was nothing. Like it was nothing, man. Like, I cannot wait to see. I cannot wait to see what this pass rush does this season. If we can have interior pressure coming from guys like Travis Jones, Nnamdi Madubuike, Brent Urban's back in the fold, Broderick, all those guys down there. And then we have like some younger guys on the roster, just like some real good depth pieces to never let up. Man, like I can't stress enough how good I think this defensive line is going to be this year. And that translates again to Robert's point, how good the DBs can play as well. And we know how good the DBs have, look on paper. So let me see what's going on. Mayo's Cloud channel. I see you in the chat. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the bad. Let's talk about some of the bad, right? Again, longer beam, Bilal Kone going down. That definitely sucks for sure. Uh, I know you guys want to talk about Daniel Faalele. So let's go ahead and get into him. Let's get into Daniel Faalele. And this is kind of like the bad and the ugly for Faalele. I just don't understand why, me personally, I don't understand why the Ravens and John Harbaugh literally refuse to give Faalele any competition at the right guard spot. Now, I want to preface the rest of what I'm about to say with the fact that Daniel Faalele was a player last year who was very up and down. He started the season off very shaky, but he ended it very strong. He ended it very strong, and I want to see what his PFF grade was for. I want to see what his PFF grade was for the playoffs because I believe it wasn't bad the last time I checked it, and it was a couple of months ago. Let me see, Mr. Daniel Faalele. But yeah, basically what I'm saying is before I get into this, there needs to be some sort of challenge there. And I don't care how buddy he is and what type of relationship he has with John Harbaugh. At the end of the day, protecting a $200 million quarterback is way more important than any sort of relationship with a guy you have on the offensive line. I'm sorry, but it just is. It just is. Looking at okay, here we go. His postseason grades in 2024 were slightly above average, 68 overall grade, 63.8 pass blocking grade, which was 14th out of 34 guards, and a 65.8 run blocking grade, which was 9th out of 34 guards. So the pass blocking is really where he has an issue when he has to kind of step back and let guys run into him. In the run game with his big frame, he does tend to perform a lot better. But when you're trying to hold up against a pass rush, you have to be able to shift your feet in order to be in the right position to jab and punch a defender, a defensive tackle at the right time, but he does not have good enough feet. There was a play in the preseason game where he was the pulling guard around to the left side, and he just completely whiffs on his guy because he's just not fast enough to stay in front or get in front of him to begin with, you know? And these are the things that you put on tape in a preseason game, and Todd Monken comes out today and just straight up defends him and says, "Oh, well, you can't look at one highlight or negative highlight or whatever from a guy and judge him based off of that." But it's like, no, this is something that we've seen time and time again from this guy. And yes, he did get a little bit better as the season went on. I agree with that. But at what point are we going to start asking ourselves the question, hey, do we need to give this guy some competition? Because right now it doesn't seem like there's any competition at all. There's not a Ben Cleveland who can get plugged in there or nothing. Like nobody's talking about any of that, right? There was another rep in the preseason game with Daniel Faalele. He tries to give the defensive tackle a big bear hug, right? He tries to give him a big bear hug instead of actually getting into his chest and moving him out the way. Like I said, he kind of lets guys run into him on the pass rush instead of like sticking them at the point of attack, and that's his problem. That's his issue. So, I think that Dre says, "I don't see how Ben Cleveland can be worse." I agree. I agree. At this point, I would try anything, but I just don't know if he's the guy who. And let me say this: I think that the Ravens feel this way about Daniel Faalele and having him start, you know, at the starting right guard for Lamar Jackson. They don't believe that interior pressure, and this honestly goes for both sides at guard, left guard and right guard. I don't think that they've believed too much in investing a whole lot into those positions because of the type of quarterback that they have. Because of the type of quarterback that Lamar Jackson is, I don't see them prioritizing interior pressure because they know that Lamar Jackson, unlike a lot of other quarterbacks in this league, unlike a Jared Goff, unlike a Tua Tagovailoa, unlike to some degree a Baker Mayfield, you know what I mean? To some degree, a Justin Herbert, right? Like these guys aren't quite as elusive, when it comes to straight on pressures and runners as a guy like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. You know what I mean? Guys like that. So I think that they kind of say, okay, look, Lamar is going to make the offensive line look a lot better than it is anyway. So let's just make sure we got bookend tackles, and I think we do have that with Ronnie Stanley over on the left, Roger Rosengarten over on the right. I think we've got the good tackles in play. But when it comes to the interior pressure, and of course we got the center lockdown, we got Tyler Linderbaum lockdown. So if Linderbaum can, I think their idea is that if Linderbaum can at least help with one guy, you know, then let's let Lamar Jackson do the rest of the work because we want to spend our capital elsewhere on this team. Which, hey, maybe that if you want to save a couple dollars here and there, maybe that's the way to do it. Maybe that's the way you do it. But it does, at the end of the day, put your $250 million quarterback at risk. It does, and you're getting ready to extend Lamar Jackson. Could have been any day now. I mean, it could be soon. It could be sooner than we expect, right? But you're going to want him to be healthy. You're going to want him to be upright, right? You're going to want him to have clean pockets, right? Because as good as Lamar Jackson is, and as good as Lamar Jackson is at resetting the pocket, and I was thinking about this a lot today as well. Lamar Jackson is the type of quarterback who can literally dance around, buy time. Okay, this pocket broke down. Let me move this way, get my guy in position to reblock, create myself a new pocket. Oh, it happened again. Let me reset the pocket again. He's done that multiple times. He did it against the Jaguars. He's done it against the Steelers. He's done it against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game and so many other teams. He's so good at resetting the pocket. It really makes his offensive linemen look a lot better than they are a lot of the time, you know. And I think a guy like Daniel Faalele has definitely benefited from that. Now, if the Ravens start slow due to offensive line troubles, let's say there's penalties, guys who are repeat offenders or whatnot, or guys who are just simply getting beat a whole bunch, then I would fully expect the Ravens to kind of shift gears, you know. But it does kind of like, it worries me. It concerns me. It does that Todd Monken and John Harbaugh are so quick to defend this guy. And like, I get it. The media is going to poke and prod at Monken and at Harbaugh to try to say something negative about Daniel Faalele, and maybe not even something negative, but just like a try to get out of Harbaugh and Monken, like, hey, are you guys going to change this up here? Are you guys going to explore other options potentially? And for them to say, yeah, well, maybe we're going to look into this and that. We're going to exhaust all, I think that's what the media is trying to get out of them. And so early, in the preseason, before the regular season even starts, John Harbaugh, Todd Monken, they already have set in their mind that they want number 77 to play right guard. So anything, you can't tell them anything right now. You can't. You can't tell them anything right now. They're looking at film from last year, from the weeks that he was getting better and progressing. And I'll say that again. I don't want that to go by the wayside. He did progress throughout the 2024 season at, playing that right guard position. And it's only, I think, his what? It'll be his second year doing so full time, I want to say. Let me see. Let me see here. Let's see, 2020. Yeah. Yeah, I believe this is second year full time playing right guard, if I'm not mistaken. Second or third, one of the two. But let me see what you guys are saying here in the chat. Chat's moving tonight. Chat's moving tonight. Appreciate all y'all for coming through. 85 people watching live. We're not done with Daniel. We're not done with Daniel. Sound off in the chat what you guys are thinking about Daniel Faalele right now. Didn't expect them to say anything bad about him publicly, but man, get him off the field. LOL, he's not a starter. He could be a good backup though. I mean, I can agree with that. I can agree with that. I can agree with that. Blood pressure medicine, that's pretty accurate. Hello. Yeah, honestly, he can afford to shed 30, 40 pounds. His sheer size and weight are his weakness. He's just not quick enough. He's not quick enough. He's not light enough on his feet. Even again, for like plays where he has to pull as the guard. He's just, you know, he's just not there. And let me see here. Let me actually see his full 2024 grades really quick from the regular season. So yeah, run blocking grade, he was actually ranked 58.5, which is 86 out of 136 guards, and pass blocking grade 63.2, which is 63rd out of 136 guards. And again, I think that a lot of that does have to do with the help that he has from a Tyler Linderbaum. I think a lot of that also has to do with the help that he has from his quarterback, Lamar Jackson. At the end of the day, our guy Lamar Jackson, he does not take a whole bunch of sacks, right? And we know why, because he's one of the most elusive quarterbacks in the league. He never gives up on the play. And, that makes his O-line look pretty good, pretty damn good a lot of the time. So, again, man, I really do think that John Harbaugh, Todd Monken, and this team, they have to be objective, right? You got to be objective with what you see on tape, and he put some good things on tape as well. I mean, it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all bad, but I think you have to kind of consider other options there at some point. I don't think you want to just rock out with Lamar Jackson getting pressured up the middle because Daniel Faalele is getting put on his butt, like quite literally put on his butt, backed up and on his butt, all 380 pounds. I just don't understand it. Um, just from a straight bull rush up the middle. And that happens, and Lamar Jackson all of a sudden has Daniel Faalele in his lap. And now all of a sudden Lamar Jackson has to scramble out. We know he's great at making those plays, which is why we don't even think about it or remember these type of mishaps sometimes, because Lamar Jackson just makes something out of nothing happen so damn much. We don't even think about it. But that's just not the way that you want Lamar Jackson to be, especially not in the postseason. I think we're at the point now where in the postseason you can very ill afford Lamar Jackson to kind of feel any sort of jitters back there in the pocket. The offensive line has to be tight as ever, because as Lamar has said in the playoffs, I mean, he tends to get antsy, right? And there's nothing that's going to make a quarterback more antsy than interior pressure, really just any sort of consistent pressure. So that has to be fixed. That has to be addressed. I'm sorry, John Harbaugh. I know you love the guy. I don't necessarily hate him either, because again, I got to give the guy credit for bouncing back last season and ending the season pretty strong. But there just has to be some sort of accountability when it comes to the ugly that we see. We see some good, we see some bad, then we see some straight up ugly with Daniel Faalele, and that is, that range of just kind of outcomes. It's not conducive to winning football. It's not conducive to winning football. Manuel's COD channel says good person doesn't always translate to good player. And that's the news that I've heard. I mean, that's kind of like what I've heard about, Daniel Faalele. Like, he's a great kid. And that's what they love about him. And they have a great relationship. I think Jim Harbaugh was, recruiting him or whatever, has a relationship with him too. Joe D, the former offensive line coach who ended up passing away, rest in peace to him, had a good relationship with him. Daniel Faalele, that is. And yeah, it's just, and Killer Cam says here, you don't give guys like that automatic jobs next season. And that's so true, bro. That's so true. Did you guys see that tweet from Jeff Zarebek where somebody was asking him? It was going around like as a viral screenshot of a Twitter conversation between Jeff Zarebek and some random Twitter user. Shout out to whoever that is. But they were talking about the left guard competition. That's what Jeff Zarebek was talking about in his original tweet. And then the guy responds to Jeff Zarebek by saying, well, yeah, well, what about right guard? What's the competition looking like there? And Jeff Zarebek responds to him and says there is no competition at right guard. Like, it's Daniel Faalele's job, and not even to lose. It's just his to keep. Like, no comp. And like, I just don't understand that. I just don't understand that. I would assume that you would want a little bit more stability at that position. Again, protecting your super expensive quarterback. But like Killer Cam says here, man, you can let him compete for the job. You can let him compete for the job. Cam also says finish below average. Lisa said, Lisa, do you like Daniel? I think Lisa likes Daniel Faalele. That's funny. That's funny. I don't understand. Love West chiming in says, I don't understand. O line is the most important position group in football, and we rank last on money spent on the line. And we wonder why we cannot run in the playoff, experimenting with the MVP QB. Yes. So I totally agree with you there, Love West. Again, man, I think the thing about the Ravens is they know with the type of quarterback that they have, he's gonna make things better. And like I mentioned with some of those quarterbacks that I mentioned, about 10 minutes ago, like a Tua Tagovailoa or a Jared Goff or some of these more statuesque quarterbacks, right? y- you can't you cannot afford that at all. Like I can only imagine if Daniel Faalele was playing for the Dolphins or the Lions and what that would look like for their quarterbacks. Like that just, he would kill their games. He would kill their games. It's just saying. Just saying. But we got to move on. I think that the John Harbaugh and Todd Monken are lockstep in the same idea that Daniel Faalele will be starting week 1 and throughout the season for the foreseeable future. Like that's just it's not even a debate. It's not a question, right? And again, it's no competition. It's no competition. Those coaches would yank him out. He would be cut. Yeah, see what I'm saying? See what I'm saying, man? ISO says he's gonna suit up on Sunday. Faalele's are gonna be on the bench. I believe in you, ISO. I believe in you. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well if you're watching on the YouTube. If you're watching on X, if you're watching on Instagram, big shout out to you. Thank you for coming through. Make sure, when you get a chance, maybe not now, but when you get a chance, head over to YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Gonna be putting this daily kind of segment on Apple Podcasts and Spotify pretty soon. So also look out for that too. Also look out for that. Jing says no competition for Faalele is just wild. Emmanuel's COD channel says the only way Faalele won't start is that if he gets injured, but not praying him getting injured. Obviously not. Definitely not. Definitely not. So if you fumble in the doghouse, but you whiff, if you fumble, you're in the doghouse, but if you whiff on the blocks, you start. Yeah, man. Very strange relationship. Very strange relationship. I want to say that there was a stat from that first preseason game talking about Faalele's performance there. Yeah, he had the second worst pass blocking efficiency among guards in week 1 of the preseason. So maybe this is a guy, he's one of those guys where he just kind of has to heat up, because it was the same thing last season. Same thing last season where, he started off very, very slow, but he started to kind of piece things together and get better as the season went on. So I don't know. Maybe he's got to get back into, I don't know if it's necessarily football shape. I know that he was struggling with conditioning for a little while. You can see that in some of the videos, from the reports that were coming out. So maybe he just kind of has to warm up the engine a little bit. Maybe he's one of those guys. So at the end of the day, again, we're going to have to put our faith in him because John Harbaugh and Todd Monken's full faith is in him. Again, Todd Monken co-signing Daniel Faalele earlier today. Killer Cam saying he sees 77 as his Blind Side movie. That's crazy. That's crazy. I don't know if like, and obviously I'm just purely being facetious here, but I don't know if Daniel Faalele is like some sort of like cartel leader who's like laundering money through the NFL, and like therefore the Ravens have to have him out there so they can pay him his contract. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. There's some conspiracies that I was thinking about earlier today, and I'll just because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Chaos says, "Yeah, bro. Pray for 8. Pray for 8. He's in year 4. He is what it is. Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and move on here to So that was kind of like the good, bad, and the biggest ugly stuff that I saw from the preseason. Of course, Cooper Rush wasn't good. Daniel Faalele wasn't good. Um, you know, there was the ugliness from Bilal Kone and Robert Longerbeam going down for the season. Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell showed up. We expected to see Keaton Mitchell back in action. We did. And Keaton Mitchell had a touchdown. He had a touchdown and a couple of really good runs. The speed does look like it's back now. And I think that he's going to have to, earn his keep on this roster in garbage time, in garbage time games. Obviously, preseason, all of preseason is garbage time pretty much. But in these games, and some of, if we're really handing it to a team in the regular season, and by fourth quarter, the game is pretty much all but over. I could see Keaton Mitchell kind of getting in there and maybe popping off some big runs, but that's where he's going to have to make his money and kind of earn his keep, unfortunately, at this point, only because, again, he sits behind Derrick Henry, who's Derrick Henry, and Justice Hill, who is probably one of the best dudes, right, at running back in the NFL, because you could just ask him to do anything and he'll do it with a smile, and he'll do it very well, right? Very underrated player. So Keaton Mitchell, man, you're gonna have to keep breaking off big runs, and I hope that. Let me see. Jing says Keaton don't need to play anymore in the next 2 preseason games. Yeah, he's dealing with a groin right now. I was hoping to see him back out there, if that would ended up being a minor thing, but I do also agree with you. It's probably best to err on the side of caution with him. And I was on the record last week talking about how I think personally that the Ravens should play some of their starters in the preseason just to kind of get them used to live game reps. Like we saw a lot of starters play, in this past week in the preseason. But obviously Lamar Jackson did not play. None of the starters really played for the Ravens, just kind of being extra, extra cautious there, which again, I'm cool with. I have no problem with that. But, when the Ravens, I don't want to say inevitably, but if the Ravens were to start slow, that would be one of the things that I would think back on. If it comes to like, just ugly, excuse me, ugly, like unnecessary penalties and things like that, and just not looking like the world beaters that they normally are, especially in the regular season so soon. I think that that would be something that uh, I don't know. It would trouble me. It would trouble me, and I would think back to this time in the preseason where they could have gotten some live game reps. We got Haha Dix. What's going on, Haha Dix? Just became a member. What's going on, man? Appreciate you for coming through and joining the Purple Rain patrons. You will be added to the intro episode of the every single show that we do here. Thank you for becoming a member, brother. Big shout out to you. Big shout out to you. Okay. Yeah. And so again, and with the memberships, guys, since the season is coming around, I want to start doing these videos again all the time, like literally every day. I want this to be a daily show. So some of the videos, like some of the clips and the outtakes from it, I'll go ahead and I'll piece those together and I'll put them in a membership only tier for whoever wants to watch. Whoever wants to watch. Eyes of Tor says, "Is that haha Clinton Dix?" That would be absolutely hilarious, wouldn't it? That would be absolutely hilarious. Let me see. Sutton, who do you think will be beside Roquan Smith? I think it's definitely going to be Trenton Simpson for sure. I fully do expect him to be out there with Roquan alongside him. And I don't want to say that I have high expectations for Trenton Simpson this season, but I do expect him to be a lot better going into his second year of being like a full-time starter alongside Roquan. And it kind of took Patrick Queen back in the day a little bit of time to adjust playing with Roquan and kind of knowing how they could bounce off of each other. So, and honestly, I need Roquan to be better this year too. I need him to be better this year too. I think he was like top 10 in tackles, maybe top 6, something like that, top 7. But I just need him to be much more of an impact player out in open space, like really be kind of like that devastating, like, enforcer, right? That's something that I feel like the Ravens are missing, especially in the playoffs, especially in these colder, month games, right? You need kind of like that enforcer who's going to be relentless at the point of attack and really make guys think twice about, coming over the middle. Think twice about running up the middle, meeting them in the A, things like that. Like that's going to be important. So I really do want better linebacker play from both Trenton Simpson and Roquan Smith. That is absolutely for sure, 100%. Oh, Chris M with the membership. Appreciate you, Chris M. Welcome to the Purple Rain patrons. And you are a true Purple Rain pioneer. Sign up and becoming a member here at PRP. Again, a lot more coming from members in the future, but you will also be added to our intro video, which is another really cool thing. We run it at the front of every single show for our PRP patrons, and you guys are goated individuals. We appreciate you guys, each and every one of you. But yeah, appreciate you again, Chris. Let me see what else we have. I see Higgins, the sleeper. Jalen Higgins, yeah, that he's another one who I'm looking for as well in the next couple of games. Giovanni Long says, I don't trust Simpson. I can see how you. Okay, so that's one of the holes on this team, on this roster, right? If we had to think about like the top 3 holes or voids, for lack of better words, on this roster, I think I would go guards, and I'll just kind of put them as a tandem, left and right. I would go linebacker, kind of like that weak side linebacker. And then I would go probably at this point, I'd probably go corner. I'd probably go corner because I think that the Ravens are kind of getting thin when it comes to depth in that department. I know we're gonna be looking at guys like TJ Tampa and Jalen Armour Davis to step up this season, and instead of a Jair Alexander, Nate Wiggins, and Marlon Humphrey whenever they're rotated out for whatever reason. So I can see that those are probably the top 3 holes on the team. Defensive tackle is one where I just want to wait and see how consistent, like who they trot out there on a 3-down basis, right? What that defensive line, what their idea of that is when the starters come out. Um, that's when I have to wait and see. I don't want to say it's necessarily a weakness right now, especially with some of the young guys on the bottom. Like I mentioned, Okoye earlier as well looked really good in his first preseason activity. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I think top 3 weaknesses would definitely be corner, but that would be my number 3 because I think we do have some really good starters there, especially with the Wouzier, who nobody's really talking about right now too. But number 2 would be linebacker, and then number 1 would be guard for sure, for sure. Let's see here. All right, we got Chike. What's going on? Chike is in the house. Dropping a question in here. Says, what does the term mechanics mean to you, Sutton? I ask because Dan Orlovsky mentioned in his top 10 quarterbacks list with the best mechanics, and he left Patrick Mahomes off the list and was wondering your thoughts. This is a great question. I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this earlier today. I was driving around, and I saw that Patrick Mahomes, and by the way, Nick Wright, who, of course, as we all know, is the biggest Chiefs homer in national media television, but not too much on my guy, Nick Wright, because I actually kind of like Nick Wright, despite some of his Lamar Jackson takes. But getting to Dan Orlovsky's list and what he talks about quarterback mechanics here, I don't really know what he's talking about when he says that Patrick Mahomes is left off the list when it comes to mechanics. And especially if you're going to have Lamar Jackson on there, because if you ask me, I think Patrick Mahomes has better mechanics. I don't want to say much better, but I think better by a pretty good amount than Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, you know, when we talk about mechanics, I think you're talking about the traditional throwing style. And the thing about football in 2025 is that you have these athletes who just simply have their own way of doing things and they make it work, a la Lamar Jackson. That's what he does. That's what he's been doing since he's been playing football. He just kind of makes it work his way throwing the football. It doesn't look like anybody else. So when I think about throwing mechanics, I think about, you know, Peyton Manning did a commercial for Nickelodeon. It was either Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network back in the day where he was literally showing kids on national TV how to throw a football and pretty much like the prototypical, perfect mechanical way, the right way of throwing a football. And he broke it down into like 5 steps. And I'll never forget that, like growing up watching that as a kid and seeing like how good Peyton Manning was at the time, because at one point Peyton Manning was honestly deemed as better than Tom Brady to a lot of people. until that flip was script after Tom Brady went on his generational run at the towards the middle to and end of his career. But I think that throwing motion, right, and Brady had it too, and some of the other great quarterbacks in back in the day. That is what they're referring to when it comes to mechanics. So Chris says Dan is a QB dummy. I don't respect him. I mean, yeah, I know everybody likes to clown Dan Orlovsky because he ran out of the back of the end zone when he was a Detroit Lion, and didn't know he did that, but and that's super funny. But I think that he does know what he's talking about, especially as a quarterback. As a matter of fact, let me pull up Dan Orlovsky's list really quick. I want to pull that up. Let me see. Dan Orlovsky top 10, because there was a chart, I believe. Let's see. Quarterbacks. Now, of course, I can't find it. That's classic. I see the athletics one though, which I did also want to talk about, which was very interesting to me. Well, not too interesting, because I knew that most people would put Mahomes, Burrow, and Allen above Lamar Jackson. But again, I don't really pay that any mind. That's just kind of like preseason talk. They're all going to be saying Lamar Jackson is probably the number 2 quarterback in the world by week 6. We all know how it goes. He's just got to go out there and remind everybody again what he's able to do on the field. Okay, but yeah, I'll get off of that. I don't want to spend too much time, but yeah, Chike, I think that answers your question pretty well. I think mechanics is basically based off of traditional throwing motion, right? And some of the guys who were the pioneer quarterbacks of this league, like a Peyton Manning, like a Brady, and some of those other older guys as well. Aaron Rodgers, like that throwing motion where it just looks classic, I guess. Other guys make it work, like Lamar, but I think that's what the criteria, the standards were for it. All right. Um, Let me see. Just too flaky. Hold on. Darn Siri again. Okay. Let's get into some more of what we had. Let's talk somebody else from the AFC North. Let's talk some Shador. Let's talk some Shador Sanders, right? Shador Sanders, he was, I talked about it in a short video a couple of days ago, and because he was still listed as the 4th quarterback on the depth chart. But as we all knew, Joe Flacco was not going to play any preseason games because he's super old. He's like a million. And Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel were both hurt. So somebody had to play quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. So they bought in Tyler Huntley. But Shador Sanders took a lot of reps in that game and actually looked good. I think he went 14 for 23, 100 and something yards. I can't remember the exact number, but 2 touchdowns, no picks. And he didn't look perfect. I can't say he looked perfect, but he put a lot on tape that kind of lets you know that, okay, this guy is the real deal. Like, he's the real deal. Like, let's just call it for what it is. Let's stop acting and pretending like he deserved to be, what was he, like a 5th round pick or something like that. Let's stop, or 6th round. Let's stop acting like he deserved that placement, because he absolutely didn't. He went out there and made NFL level talent, albeit preseason, but he did play against the Panthers starters for a possession where he threw a touchdown, and it was a beautiful throw in the back of the end zone. Hit his guy in stride, only where he could get it in between multiple layers of defenders. Beautiful throw, beautiful play, but he looked the part. He looked the part pretty much all night. I would love to see him do it against starting caliber competition. I know that's not going to happen because Joe Flacco is going to be the inevitable starter. But when you're the Cleveland Browns, I don't really understand protecting the lead, right, of your quarterback hierarchy, protecting a Kenny Pickett and a Dylan Gabriel over Shador Sanders. Like, somebody please tell me. Somebody please tell me. Somebody please tell me. What do you have to lose if you're the Cleveland Browns by giving Shador Sanders a more legitimate shot? And what I mean by that is giving him more first team reps in training camp, giving him more opportunities, of course, in the preseason, and kind of bumping him up that depth chart a little bit. And I don't know how official these Browns depth charts that are coming out actually are, but like give him some more opportunities. Like, what do you have to lose? At the very least, he was what, a fifth round pick, and it doesn't work out. But in the meantime, I mean, your team gets a lot more media attention and therefore a lot more butts in seats and a lot more money. You know how many celebrities were wearing number 12 jerseys or posting on social media celebrating that Shador Sanders was playing so well? Do you know what that does to increase a cult following of a player? Do you understand that? Like, what do you have to lose? But what do you have to gain from trotting out a Dylan Gabriel? I mean, if you trot a Dylan Gabriel out there, if he's great, then great. I mean, you got your guy, right? But I don't think that he was necessarily a fourth round pick for no reason, for one. But again, and even if you do trot him out there, it's going to take some time for him. If he does become good, it's going to take some time for him to get good, I think. And another thing is he's not going to draw the same attention and give you the same dollars as a Shador Sanders would. If Shador Sanders played for the Cowboys, he would be the number 2 quarterback on the depth chart right now, over Joe Milton, I think, for sure. But right underneath Dak, and in a lot of places, I think he would be a lot higher as well. But for some reason, the NFL and I guess the Cleveland Browns they just insist on continuing to humble him. Um, I know their hand is kind of forced now to kind of give him a little bit more opportunity. So we'll see what he does in the second preseason game against who do they play week 2? Let me see. Browns week 2 preseason. Browns week 2 preseason. Who do they play? Because they'll probably get some reps again. If I'm not crazy here, I'm thinking he'll probably get some reps again uh in the week 2 game. Let me see. Brown schedule. Why is it so difficult to find things on Google right now? That makes no sense. All right. Preseason. Okay. All right. So they have the Eagles. Yeah, I don't really I don't see the Eagles playing their starters week 2 preseason like that. But he will still have an opportunity, and this is against a perceived better team that just won the Super Bowl. He'll still have an opportunity to really make some big headlines. Some big headlines. I don't think that Kenny Pickett is practicing still. I think Dylan Gabriel is practicing, but I think that leaves Shador Sanders with yet another opportunity to go ahead and get some more reps, and that's gonna be great. It's gonna be great for him. But like I said, there is no losing. You don't lose by starting Shador Sanders by giving him a better opportunity. Let me see what you guys are saying here. Robert Kraus says the Browns literally looking like they're recruiting a workforce of quarterbacks like an assembly line. They now have the Steelers' old quarterback and both old quarterbacks off our Ravens, now 6 total. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Killer Cam doubles down on the Eagles not starting their starters at all, especially after the Landon Dickerson injury. That's absolutely right, man. They've already gotten banged up a little bit. They've already gotten their taste of, you know, preseason, injury, and they're folding. They're folding on it. And I agree. I mean, you know, I understand. I totally understand. Let me see. Honestly, Shador over Milton. Milton has 0 touch. Yeah, he does throw the ball pretty hard, but he's an insane athlete. Might be another one of those type of Anthony Richardson guys, but I don't know. I think he has a little bit higher upside than Anthony Richardson if you catch my drift. I mean, that's just what I think. That's just what I think. A bunch of Panthers fans were throwing up their wrists when he scored, man. That's another thing. Like this whole wrist motion thing where he's just like putting the wrist up to the crowd and like just kind of like telling you like what type of time he's on. I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool, man. And if you are, I mean, Nike literally like right after the game comes out with, a poster with Shador Sanders on the front. Like this is the type of attention that you want if you're the Browns. Like you can't tell me you cannot tell me that you can justify spending, what was it, $200 million on Deshaun Watson, all fully guaranteed, and tell me that you don't want the attention of Shador Sanders. Because we know the attention surrounding Deshaun Watson, what was going on when the Browns went ahead and decided to pick him up, and they're still paying him to this day. You can't tell me that Shador Sanders was much more of a PR risk to you. It's not. It's not. Okay. Um, at the end of the day, he's a good kid. He speaks well. Yes, he's a little bit, uh, I guess you could say his entourage, and like he's got kind of like the moxie and stuff like that, and he's very flashy. Right there it is. He's very flashy, and maybe they don't like that, but I don't know, man. I mean, you attach your franchise to that, it's gonna bring in the money. It's gonna bring in the dollars. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And you've taken chances on guys before. I mean, Johnny Manziel won to be, Deshaun Watson. Why not take a shot on Shador Sanders? Why not? I just don't get it. Why not? Um, they have a QB daycare. That's funny. They have a QB daycare. Keeping 4 quarterbacks like it's normal. It's absolutely not. How do you humble a kid that was already humble? Palm Pilots hate black men with confidence. Oh, yeah. I think that has a lot to do with it. I mean, he's cocky. You know what I mean? I think that if an Arch Manning comes out and he's as flashy, which I don't think that Arch Manning is some quiet kid. You know what I mean? Like when he gets fired up, he gets fired up. So if he goes off at Texas this year, and he's of course the next big thing coming out of college, which he will be inevitably. He's a Manning. He's got NFL royalty like already in his blood. I don't think that there's going to be anybody questioning his character or anything like that, for lack of better words, for any reason, anything that he might do. So yeah, that's that on Shador Sanders. I think that Shador um, definitely deserves some more playing time. Definitely deserves some more playing time. Okay. One more thing I wanted to get into. One more thing I wanted to touch on before I get out of here. And I want to appreciate you guys so much for coming out to this episode of the show, of the Quiet Storm Sports podcast, featuring your boy Sutton Def. You can follow me on Twitter at Sutton Def and on Instagram at Sutton Def as well, where I'm both streaming live to right now. Now, Joe Flacco mentions Jing. Joe Flacco says in a daycare, I think that Joe Flacco, one thing about Joe Flacco, it came out earlier today that his sons called him trash. They weren't impressed by anything he did, like not even winning the Super Bowl. I thought that was kind of funny and cute for his sons, who I think are no older than like maybe like 7, 8 years old. I mean, of course they're gonna say this. They don't have the same, you know, view on, I guess you could say, reality, right? And things that happened before their time, like it doesn't matter to them as much. And I can see that. But I just thought that was kind of funny. Let me see. Let me see. Zay Lopez Diaz says, I don't think Arch Manning is coming out this year. No, I mean, I think that he might. I mean, if he go like again, if he at Texas this year plays very, very well, let's say wins Heisman, wins the national championship, or at least gets there and plays really well, puts his team in good position, has a ton of good highlights. I think that, there's gonna be some, I don't want to say peer pressure, but maybe just kind of like a societal pressure. Maybe there's so many like financial pressures, like, because there's so many benefits of Arch Manning going to the NFL, and getting him in there as quick as possible, because NIL is bigger than it is, bigger than it's ever been before right now. I get that. But that NFL money and like the sponsorships and everything like that, once you actually get to the league, it would be huge. It would be absolutely huge for him and his brand. But again, we'll see what the Mannings decide to do with Arch Manning's future. We'll see. And he's going to be number one. He's going to be a number one pick. That's for sure. Cam. 100% agree there. 100% agree. But okay, one last thing I wanted to touch on. This is like shifting gears from football really quick. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'll probably make a separate video on it as well. But one of the things I wanted to touch on was the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Excuse me. They struck a deal the other day with Paramount and CBS for $7.7 billion over 7 years. And as you guys know, I'm very into UFC. I make UFC content on this very same channel. So if you're into that as well and you're new here, make sure you check that out. And make sure you like this video as well and subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate that. But getting to it, I think that the UFC, what they're doing is, obviously killing the pay-per-view model, which is something that they have never done before in the history of their sport, of their brand. They've always been a pay-per-view based company where, every month, once a month, you got to pony up $60 to $80 somewhere in there in order to watch their product. And that was something that was just a deal breaker for a lot of consumers over time. So now, what you're going to be able to do in order to watch the UFC, first of all, they're going to have a lot of these fight cards available for free, like pay per view, and like what would be considered a pay per view, which now they're calling premium live events. You're going to be able to watch those for free on CBS, or at least some of them. But if you subscribe to Paramount Plus, I think for $8 a month, you can watch any UFC card with advertisements. And if you pay $13 a month or something like that, you can watch any UFC card without advertisements, which is a much, much better deal. A much better deal than, again, paying $60 to $80 every month, which I know a lot of people didn't do to begin with. Wink, wink. You know what I'm saying? But again, I think it's the fight against that. It's the fight against the illegal streamers, right? That's really what you're looking at with this deal. Like, the UFC had to do something and had to pivot because they knew they were losing a lot of money to people who, were just kind of streaming their stuff from offshore servers. And I think that this is a good step it's a right step it's a step in the right direction because it gives consumers a better and more viable option, especially with the economy right now and everything like that. A lot of people already have Paramount Plus, but if you don't have it and you're really into UFC, $8 a month with commercials that you already had with the pay-per-views, and with the other cards, that's not a bad deal at all. Not to mention you get a bunch of other stuff on their streaming platform too. So, I think that with that being said, I mean, it's going to be great for, again, consumers, but I don't know what it's going to mean for fighter pay. I don't think that they're necessarily getting a cut of this deal. Even though the UFC, I think they're going from like 500 million a year to 1.1 billion dollars a year in money from Paramount with this new deal. So in theory, the fighters should be getting paid more, but there has been no news on whether or not that's actually the case. And if that isn't the case, if they're not getting paid more, then I do hate this. Like, regardless of what how great it is for the consumer and how cheap it would be, you know, there is no product without the employees, right? So I think that, just with any company, I think ethically it's wrong. But I would hope that news comes out that the fighters will get more of a bigger split, a bigger chunk of that revenue coming into the UFC. So, again, I think it's gonna be very, very interesting to see how that goes. I think it starts actually January 2026. So there's gonna be 4 to 5 more pay-per-views that they're gonna ask us to pay $60 to $80 for. But, and with us already knowing that in 2026 we're just gonna hop over to Paramount Plus, I think that's kind of crazy. They should have saved the news of this deal like probably till around Christmas, so people didn't feel salty about buying the rest of the pay-per-views if they even plan to do so anyway. Again, wink, wink. But Killer Cam says the fighters will give zero pushback, and yeah, I think that's the thing. The fighters, I think the nature of the fight game is like, just kind of be shut up, be tough, show up to work, collect your check, and kick some ass when it's time to kick some ass. Like, don't be whining to Dana White and the UFC about how much you get paid, because at the end of the day, like, you just want to show up, kick some ass, and get paid like that. And as long as it's like a good amount to where you can like take care of your family, not so you maybe necessarily you can set up you and your family for life, but you can take care of your family and make a good living. I think most of those guys, most of those fighters are okay with that. They're okay with that. They're all right with it, you know. But they do absolutely deserve to get paid more for putting on these great events pretty much every single week out of the year. And I hope that and Killer Cam says they have no one to blame but themselves. Yeah, there's gonna have to be some sort of like union or something, some sort of support group. I don't know, that gets started up by some of these guys in the UFC. But some of these guys are just so hungry, and that's why they're into fighting to begin with. So they don't have that mentality of like, put it this way, like the average NBA star or NFL player has been playing football or basketball pretty much their whole life. So when they get to the big leagues and whatnot, they already know, of course, what they're getting paid, but I think they have more of like they've already had an idea their whole entire life of like getting paid big, big, big money in these leagues. But fighting for a lot of guys isn't something that they started from since they were a kid. You know what I mean? Some of these guys kind of stumbled into it, late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, some guys even later 20s, right? It's just kind of something that finds you, and it finds very, very hungry and desperate people a lot of the time. Like a lot of the biggest stars came from very humble and hungry beginnings. Like Conor McGregor was one of them. He was like living out on the streets and stuff like that. Had a very rough life until he came into the UFC and became a superstar. But again, I think a lot of these guys are hungry, and that's the reason why they don't really complain. They don't really complain. They're getting paid enough to them, and this is not. I'm not speaking for all of them, but I think a lot of them on the roster feel that way. So uh, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. They do not have anyone to blame but themselves because they aren't giving any pushback right now. But I think it just speaks to the mentality of a fighter. I think that's really all it is. That's all it is. But and also the other thing too is that it's only like this whole Paramount Plus thing is only going to be available in the states, only in the United States of America. So that's another thing to kind of like think about as well. I'll definitely be having it, and I think that it will get a lot more eyes on the sport because, when you have CBS involved, like a major network like that, that kind of extends outside of because formerly they were with ESPN, but CBS is something that even non-sports fans watch. That's a network that even non-sports fans watch. So if you have just cards just casually on CBS on a Saturday night, you're going to get a lot of new eyes on the sport. And I think that's part of the idea. As they spoke about, Dana White announced that he's going to be doing a UFC White House card the next 4th of July. I assume that will be on CBS live and for free for the entire world to see. And again, the consumers win, but I would love the fighters to, get their win as well. So they got to speak up on it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have on that. Let me see before we get out of here. Zay Lopez Diaz says that app does not exist in my country. Oh, what country? What country? What country are you streaming from, Zay Lopez? I'd love to know. I'd love to know. Manuel's College Channel says Sutton is that with a B? Yes, billion, $7.7 billion. That is crazy. That is crazy. Dana White is a very, very rich man. And again, I think it makes it all the worse. All the worse that, the fighters aren't up front getting a lot more for this. So, yeah. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there for this episode of Quiet Storm Sports, guys. Thank you guys so, 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 so much for coming out to this episode. Please, please, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. I see Jing says in the comments, says, I can't find the link to sign up for the membership. How did you sign up? It should be if you're watching on YouTube, Jing, you should be able to, should be a membership button either, if not on the bottom of this video, if you go onto the actual channel as well, there should be a button up there to sign up for the membership too. But I appreciate you for your consideration, Jing. I really, really do. Killer Cam says 1.1 billion per year. That's a boatload of money with a B. Boat with a B. Him, but mostly TKO, the parent company, for sure, for sure. They're making a boatload of money too. Cam the Baptist in the house says PRP hashtag replay gang. Also, always giving a big shout out to the replay gang. Always love for the replay gang. If you're watching this on your way to work and you watch this, at school, at work, wherever, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. But yeah, until next time, my good family, my Rain Gang family, I will see you guys. You guys stay positive, test negative, and never, ever, ever forget, even on the rainiest of days, to call God. I'm going to catch you guys in the next one. Peace.